Hi, I'm Mike Holt, and I'm with MikeHolt.com, and we're going to be talking about generators part 2 of 2. I think maybe there's going to be a 3 or 2. I don't know. But before we get started, I want to take a moment just to thank God for the blessings that we have and the blessings that I'm able to pass on to other people because of the skills He's given me. And I hope I handle myself in a way that I'd be proud after. I'm not always a happy guy. All right, listen. You shouldn't be watching this video if you didn't see the video from the previous recording, which was June 16th. If you hadn't seen that, you might want to stop this, go to MikeHolt.com/live, click on the link that says June, and on the right-hand side, I'll get a little table there. Pick June 16th and watch that video. So I'm assuming I'm making that assumption. 2, like I said in the first video, you've completed my electrical theory course because, see, I know what I cover in theory. And everything I cover in theory, that includes the DVDs, not just the book, is based upon the National Electrical Code. Okay? 3, you've completed my bonding and grounding course, including watching the DVDs. I'm making this assumption that you really understand bonding and grounding. That's not 3. 4, you've actually completed my understanding the NEC, and you can see some of the books here that's related to that. You really understand the National Electrical Code. You understand the scope of the code and what it includes and the general requirements and all that other stuff. I'm assuming all of that because it really hurts me as I'm preparing, and I want to say something, and I feel so bad because there's so much basics that you need to know to understand this, and I can't make this like a 6-hour program. So making that assumption, you're ready to go. If not, go back and do those things. All right, here we go. This is continuing on generators that we covered from the previous video. Mike, can I use a manual interlock, which is a non-switching neutral transfer switch, with a power inlet marked for use with a floating neutral system if the generator has a floating neutral? The answer is yes. Let's talk about this mechanically. This is a mechanical interlock. It really is a transfer switch. Now, when you put that mechanical interlock, it does not switch the neutral, which means that the generator supplying the premises, if you're going to use a manual interlock, is going to have to make sure that that generator does not have the neutral bonded to the equipment grounding conductor at the generator. We talked about last week portable generators, and I said that they were required to be listed, and then I couldn't find it real quickly, and then we found out later on it was 445, I think it was .6 or something like that, and I'm reading it, and Brian and he's reading something else. He goes, Mike, it's not in the code, and I'm reading in the code. He's online. He says, Mike, it's not in the code book anymore. So the requirement that generators be listed was actually not added to the 2020 code. But not only that, that requirement only applied to stationary generators, not portable generators. Not that it matters because it's not even a requirement. So let's get it clear. If I'm dealing with a portable generator or a stationary generator, the code does not require them to be listed. It's an important little point later on I'm going to need to make. Okay, so looking back here on this panel board, we have an interlock, a mechanical interlock, and that doesn't switch to neutral, which means the generator has to have a neutral. The neutral is not bonded to the equipment grounding conductor at the generator. Hold on. Okay. So what that means is your generator has to have this neutral terminal within the generator not bonded to the equipment grounding conductor. If that's the case, then you can use that mechanical interlock. Okay? Let me stop right there. Okay. Now, when you do the mechanical interlock, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't put the correct graphic here. When you put the mechanical interlock right here, then you're not switching the neutral at this mechanical interlock. So that neutral is not being switched. That means that the neutral and the equipment grounding conductor connection at the generator needs to be opened. And we're going to talk about some controversy in a bit. So now your power inlet right here, which is going to be plugged in and twisted on, okay, for connection of a non-separately derived floating neutral system. So now it's the first time we're going to use the word floating neutral. This is saying that when you connect this generator, if it is a floating floating neutral, that means a neutral to equipment grounding conductor in the generator is not connected. Then you can use this mechanical interlock. If the neutral is actually connected or bonded to the equipment grounding conductor in the generator, well then that would be considered a separately derived system, and it says a bonded neutral system. So you have to put a label right there on the interlock, on the power inlet. Then that means that you cannot use this type of manual transfer switch. Talk more about that. Just slowly build up inside here. Okay. So now, what is the danger of terminating the neutral conductor from a bonded neutral generator to the neutral terminal of the panel board? In other words, Mike, what's the big deal if I put a mechanical interlock at the panel, put a portable generator, and that portable generator has a bonded neutral? What's the big deal? I never paid attention to this anyhow. I just put a power inlet and put a mechanical interlock. I got my money and they got the generator, they plugged in. So what's the big deal there? Will this cause current to backfeed to the utility? Like, what's the problem here? All right. You take a generator that has a bonded neutral, and it would be maybe marked on there, neutral bonded to frame, let's just say, and you connect it to a power inlet, and there needs to be a label on the power inlet now that will tell you whether it's going to be for separately drive or non-separately drive. Again, all right, you know all this stuff. Okay, then, so here's the generator. Okay, neutral bonded to the frame. Okay, well, I'm thinking when you say neutral bonded to the frame, Mike, that you're saying that that neutral is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor. Let's say that's true. Might not be. Let's say that's true. So now this is going to be neutral bonded to the frame. I'm using a mechanical interlock. That means that I'm going to have the neutral bonded to the frame. Here's your mechanical interlock. But the neutral is also, it's bonded to the equipment grounding conductor, and the neutral is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor at the service. So let's follow electrons. Power leaves the generator, travels through the phase conductor, goes to an overcurrent protection device, goes to the light, gets back to the neutral, it returns back to the source. However, because this neutral has a system bonding jumper installed here, and there is a main bonding jumper installed at the service, that neutral return current has an alternative path, and it will travel along the main bonding jumper, along this equipment grounding conductor, back over to the system bonding jumper 250.30, and now you have what? You have current, neutral current traveling on the equipment grounding conductor, and that violates what section? 250.6. So that's the problem. Okay, Mike, I understand this. I put a transfer switch, mechanical transfer switch. Let's go back up here. I put that in there. I put a power inlet. I don't know what kind of generator the customer's going to bring in there. So I just put a label on there, and I'll just say for an unbonded, for a floating neutral system. And the owner, or the customer, went out and bought a generator, and the generator said this: neutral bonded to the frame. If that's true, and that means the neutral is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor, if that's true, then there will be objectionable current, which is going to be the neutral current returning in parallel with the neutral conductor. Okay, I got it, Mike. Is that going to backfeed the utility, though, because you have a neutral bond at the generator and a neutral bond at the service? Look at the electrons. They travel out of the generator. They do what? They get back to the source. This has nothing to do with backfeeding utility. The transfer switch is what prevents the backfeed to the utility. Okay, got that, Mike. So we're not worried about the utility. What's the problem? You have neutral current traveling on your equipment grounding conductor, and that's a violation 250.6. Okay, I understand. Technically a violation. Can you think of a hazard that would be? No, I can't think of a hazard. I'm sure there are millions of portable generators plugged into power inlets where the neutral of the generator is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor, and it's connected to a service which is bonded to the neutral equipment grounding conductor, and there is going to be times a little bit of current traveling on that equipment grounding conductor. That is a violation of the code. Can I think of a hazard that it would cause? I can't think of a hazard, a safety hazard. I can't. Okay, Mike. Is it permitted by the NEC to change a bonded neutral generator to a floating neutral generator? Like, hey, if this is a problem, well, you're telling me, Mike, all I got to do is if I remove this bond connection right here at the generator, neutral current leaves, power leaves the generator, goes to the light bulb, comes back on the neutral, there's no bonding connection here, goes back to source. Does that solve the problem? Yep. So then you can use a mechanical interlock transfer switch and just make sure that the neutral is not bonded at the generator. Okay, got that. Can I do that though? Well, let's take a look at 445.11. This is about markings on the generator. I'm just going to focus down on the bottom here. Markings shall be provided by the manufacturer to indicate whether or not the generator neutral is bonded to its frame. Pay attention to that subtle point. Bonded to its frame. Hold on. Where the bonding is modified, you see green, in the field. So that means what? You can modify it in the field. Additional markings shall be required to indicate whether the neutral is bonded to the frame. So if the neutral is bonded to the frame and you're going to unbond the neutral to the frame, well then you need to make sure the generator, you change that label from a neutral bonded to the frame to neutral unbonded to the frame. Okay? So yeah, you can do it. Let's take a look at a diagram of a generator so you can see where it's at. You see this YG? That's the green equipment grounding conductor with a yellow stripe. I don't know how to say YG, but it's a yellow ground wire, I guess, or something like that here. If you take a look at that yellow ground wire, it goes over to this grounding contact, to that receptacle, to this receptacle, to this receptacle, to this receptacle. It goes back over here, and there's a Y, and then there's going to be a grounding terminal, and it goes over to the white wire, which is going to be the neutral. So right there, as you can see, whether there's a neutral that's bonded to the equipment grounding conductor. Now, so all you got to do is what? Well, if you remove that little piece between those 2 points, well, now you don't have a neutral bonded generator, you have a neutral unbonded generator or a floating neutral. So now Champion Power Systems has a website, and they tell you about how to disconnect the neutral bond to the frame. Brian, do you want to go ahead and play that video? And can I hear it when you play it also, or no?
I'm going to play it, but you won't be able to hear it, but it's about to go up.
All right, go ahead.
This video will show you how to convert your Champion generator from bonded neutral to floating neutral. This video is for most Champion open frame generator models. Always let the engine fully cool, and disconnect the spark plug cap on the backside of the unit before working on your generator. Step 1. Remove the 2 bolts on the generator end cover with a 7mm socket. Step 2. Remove the end cover and locate the white bond wire. Step 3. The white and green-yellow wires are connected to the panel to bond the neutral. With a 7mm socket, remove only the white wire and leave the green-yellow wire in place. Completely cover the end of the white wire with electrical tape so it won't come into contact with anything else. Replace the 2 end cover bolts and tighten securely, and reverse these steps to convert your unit back to bonded neutral. For more help guides, visit the Champion Help Center at help.championpowerequipment.com.
All right, Mike, that was a really cool video. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a simpler generator to remove the equipment grounding conductor neutral bond connection. There was 2 screws on the vent cover. There's 1 little screw to separate the wires there. You put the 1 wire back, a little bit of tape, put the 2 screws. I mean, that was awesome. I don't know. I've worked on a lot of generators, and that's the easiest one I have ever seen.
I agree. So now, if I was going to be recommending portable generators, and if I was going to get involved in plugging in the generator to test it out, and I know that I need to have an unbonded generator or a floating neutral generator, that Champion, I don't know what the name of that generator is, but that would be for sure on my list that I'm going to supply. Now, I don't know how other manufacturers, but I mean, this manufacturer gave me a web page. Take a look here with information on that web page. And in addition to that, it is give me a video. This gives me a lot of confidence in their product that they understand what's going on here and how to deal with that. Now, I don't know how other manufacturers manage it. And if I was with an inspector says, well, I don't think that you can remove that bonding connection in there. You got to prove to me. And I call Generac and they're like, no, we don't have any instructions of that. Or I call some other manufacturer, no, we don't have any instructions of that. It make me not want to use any of those other generators because now I'm struggling. What am I going to do? I put a power inlet, mechanical interlock, everything is fine. I plug it in there. The inspector comes out and he says, hey, that generator has a neutral to bond connection. I'm like, how do you know it has a neutral to bond connection? He goes, give me a continuity tester. He goes from the neutral terminal of the receptacle to the equipment grounded terminal receptacle and it goes beep. Okay, that means busted. So for sure, I want to deal with manufacturers of portable generators that's going to give me the information I need so that I don't have a problem and I can competently do the job. All right, so now Honda. It's a little bit more mechanical. Honda has a bulletin. They don't have a video. This was back in August of 2003. And they say remove the generator cover, remove the nut like you just said, Brian, install the nut in the wash, remove the screw that holds the green wire and the other end of the wire, completely remove the white wire. This wire right here, reinstall the screw with the green wire right there. You take this nut off, right? You take this screw off right here. You pull out the jumper, or you actually just have to take one end off, right? I guess you just take one end off, put a little tape, because later on you want to be able to maybe reconnect that with a neutral bond connection when it's not going to be used, let's say, for optional standby power. Let's say you're going to use it on a construction site. Okay, now what what Honda also says is apply a new unbonded label over the neutral bonded to frame label. Now, Brian, I couldn't watch the video again when you were playing it. Did they say anything in the instructions about re-identifying that this was a floating neutral or an unbonded generator? Did they say anything about that label?
Yeah, they do. Actually, even on that web page that you had up earlier, there's a little, one of those links actually gives you instructions on doing that.
Okay, all right, so there you go. How easy is that? Solves all our problems. Okay, Brian, we got a comment?
Yeah, one of the guys, I think it was Michael, he says, hey, I use the generator at work for construction, but then I bring it home and use it for standby power for my house. Do I have to bond it for construction work and unbond it for my house?
Yep. Yep, you do. See, when you're using it in construction, then you go to 250.34, which says that there's no grounding requirements on portable generators if you just plug it into receptacles. But when you go to construction site, OSHA, unrelated to the NEC, OSHA has the requirements that there be an equipment grounding conductor connected to the receptacle so that the GFCI protection device will work. So perfect question. Yes, on a construction site, take the cover off, 2 screws, take one screw up, put it in there, tighten it up. You're going to bring it home? Okay, take the one screw off. But Mike, what happens if I forgot one time and I left it bonded? If I was going to make a mistake, I'd rather leave it bonded so that it doesn't really matter. A little neutral current traveling on neutral conductor, and it's called objectional current 250.6. So, but yes, unbonded for optional standby power and bonded for other purposes. Mike, if the generator has a floating neutral, that's where the neutral is not bonded to the equipment grounding conductor. Is there any hazard? Because the generator neutral is not bonded, nor is it grounded. Let's take a look at it. Here's a generator. Neutral is not connected to the equipment grounding conductor, so it's floating, or it's unbonded. Electrons leave the utility, travel through the phase conductor, go to the transfer switch, go over to the breaker, through the light. Out of the light, neutral returns to the power source. Everybody got that? Everything is fine. Okay, what about if there was a ground fault? We need to point here and say a ground fault. Well, electrons leave the supply, travel through the single pole, this one phase right here, travels to the circuit breaker, there's a ground fault. Well, assuming the light is, for the instant the light is still on, you have still neutral current traveling on the neutral conductor, but during the ground fault for the 0.03 of a second, then you have ground fault current traveling along what is called the effective ground fault current path, which gets over to the main bonding jumper, which returns to the utility neutral. You should understand that. Okay, so that's normal power. Generator's on. Okay, well, the generator's on, current goes out, travels through the one phase, but the switch transferred over, right? You mechanically switched it over, or automatically, however it is, travels along the phase conductor through the overcurrent protection to the light, returns to the light, and returns always to the source, right? Electrons don't go to Earth, they don't go up to you, they go to the source. Right there, light comes on. Okay, no problem there. What about if there's a ground fault? We'll mark this as a ground fault. Article 100 defines what a ground fault is. Okay, well then electrons leave the source, travel through the phase, to the overcurrent protection device. There's a ground fault. Ground fault current is going to the source. It travels up over here. There is no bonding connection to the generator. So then the ground fault current travels over to the service, to the main bonding jumper, onto the neutral, using the neutral conductor return path back to the source, and therefore either opening up the generator protection device or the load protection device, depending upon the situation. Mike, when do you bond the neutral? When do you not bond the neutral? That's beyond the scope of what we're talking about. It has to do with design. In healthcare facilities, they do require you to switch to neutral. If you switch to neutral, then you are required to bond and ground your generator as a separate drive system in 250.30. That's if you switch to neutral. Sometimes you have no choice. You have to switch to neutral. 277, 480 volt circuits, 1,000 amps or more, you have to switch to neutral. Healthcare facilities, generally, you have to switch to neutral. If you're on a premises that they've already switched to neutral, then you have to switch to neutral for every other system that you install. So is there a hazard of having an unbonded generator and it's not grounded? Well, look at this. Under fault condition, you can see how the fault current gets back. It's fine. But it's not grounded. It actually is grounded. Because take a look at the generator frame. Do you have to have an equipment grounding conductor from the generator frame to get back over the transfer switch? Yes. Does that equipment grounding conductor have to get back over to the service? Yes. Is the enclosure of a service equipment required to be bonded to the neutral conductor? Yes. Is the neutral conductor grounded? Yes. Guess what? Everything in this building is what? Grounded. Because once you ground the service and everything has metal parts bonded together, everything is grounded. So your generator is grounded inherently just by its connection to the electrical system. Mike, if a portable generator has a floating neutral, which means we just went and took it out, right? That's what we want to do automatically. Will the Gfci trip? Nope. Is this a hazard? Nope. Okay, let me see this, Mike. Let's understand how electricity works. Electrons leave the source, and they come back to the source. Electrons don't go to ground, but electrons will take all the available paths. It's called the ground fault current path. Article 100, all the ground fault current paths back to where? To source. Would that include the earth? Yeah, it'll include the earth. It'll include some wet wood. It'll include brick. It'll include wire lath, plumbing pipes, ductwork. It includes everything. So electron leaves the source, comes back to the source, and if it travels to a contact point, person makes contact, stands on the earth, yeah, or if they touch it, yes. I'm assuming you, theory, right? You've already got it, bonding ground, you already got all that stuff, so you understand this. Okay. So how does a person get shocked? Well, I mean, you got to drill, electrons leave the source, come over here, there's a ground fault, travel to the person, they make contact with something that's conducted back over to the source, bingo. What's the key to getting shocked? Moving electrons through your body. Pay attention to that. The key of getting shocked is when electrons are being moved. You see birds standing on power lines? How can a bird stand on a power line? I still can't figure out how to explain that to a 10-year-old kid. Still haven't figured that out yet. Maybe you guys can give me an example. I can't figure it out. All I know is that if you're standing on one point, then the electrons are not moving because you're standing on top of it. How does a Gfci operate? Well, Gfcis are looking for again, this is all covered, Gfcis, it's all covered in theory. I covered that. Gfcis operate by measuring the magnetic field differences between a hot and a neutral within a CT. I'm not going to get any further than that. So if you have current traveling out, well, how many amps are coming back? Well, the same amount of amps coming back is going out, which means the magnetic field going out that's generated is the exact same magnetic field intensity as it's coming back, because 10 amps go out and 10 amps come back. But what happens if there's a ground fault and somebody touches a phase conductor and they're making contact with the earth? Electrons are not going to ground, but they will take every available path. Well, if you make contact with something that's energized, Electrons leave the source, travel in the neutral, come back. Let's say that's 10 amps on the neutral. And then when the person makes contact with the conductor, well, now there's electrons. Guess what they're doing? Electrons are moving through the body. Pay attention. Electrons are moving. And they're moving because there is a conductor path. Not very good, but it doesn't take many electrons to kill us. So that's how GFCIs operate. So if you have electrons, currents going out, current coming back, and some is not returning on the neutral, there's going to be an imbalance. The GFCI senses that imbalance, which is going to be, it won't open if it's below 4 milliamperes, and it will always open if it's above 6 milliamperes. So I have a tendency to say, well, it's going to open at 5 milliamperes plus or minus 1. Something like that. Okay, we talked about electric shock, right? Well, what about if you have an ungrounded system or an unbonded system or a floating neutral system? Well, if electrons are going out and they're coming back to the source, and electrons are going to the person's body, but they have no place to go because the electrons have no way to get back to the source. Why? Because this is an ungrounded system. Go back over here to a grounded system. See, we usually put premises wiring is going to be grounded, okay? Normally a generator is not going to be grounded, okay? So because it's grounded, that means that the service has a grounding connection to the earth. Because it's a grounding connection to the earth, you touch something hot, electrons are going to travel through you, it's going to go to the earth, it's going to come up. But if you have a portable generator that is not grounded to the earth, well, electrons go out and they touch you, well, they're not going to go anywhere. So what do you think is going to happen to a GFCI on an unbonded system? Electrons go out, but there's no way for the electrons to get back. So guess what happens to GFCI? It's never going to open. Well, Mike, is that a hazard? Of course not. It didn't open. Yeah, but GFCI didn't trip. You know why it didn't trip? Because there were no electrons traveling to the person. See, if I remove this ground connection right here, if I had another graphic, I remove that connection there and it make it an ungrounded system, electrons go out and hit here and they're like, yeah, you can't get killed. If you can't trip a GFCI because there's no current flowing through the circuit on the ground fault, well, then you can't get killed. So if you have a generator that has GFCIs on it, and it's an unbonded generator, then the GFCIs will never operate. And there's nothing you can do about it because you can't get killed. Okay, I'm going to make a general statement. And maybe some manufacturers are watching this video, they might not be happy. If not, send me an email. Tell me how great and wonderful and smart you are by showing me your website and the information that you have in your manual so that you're not confusing us. My statement is this: never contact customer service to answer any of the following questions. Do not call your generator manufacturer, hey, do I need to ground my generator and how do I do that? Don't even ask them, because as much as they think, and they actually, and I'm sure they do, they actually think they understand what they're saying, they really don't know what they're saying. And they're going to give you advice and information. The next question, don't ask them this: is my generator a bonded or a floating neutral system? Do not ask them that, because you're more than likely not going to get the right answer. So let me give you the answers. Number one, don't ask anybody whether the neutral is bonded or not bonded. Take a continuity tester, touch the neutral terminal of the generator. I mean, just sitting there in the showroom, just sitting in the store, and go to the neutral to the ground terminal of the 110 volt receptacle. If you hear a beep, guess what you have? A bonded neutral generator. What do? Take the 2 screws off from Champion Generators, take the 1 screw off, take it off, put some tape on it, put it back in, bada bing. What, 3 minutes? You're done. If you make the connect between the neutral and the grounding contactor receptacle and you hear nothing, then you touch it, beep, okay, you do beep, then guess what? Your generator is already a floating neutral system. Now, I got some emails from a gentleman, I think his name was Todd, some last week and this week and back and forth and back and forth. And man, I don't know, Todd, you're probably watching here, but you're amazing. The questions you asked and the information, I got the impression you weren't an electrician. You're just like a customer of this hybrid XP 12000 EH. And somehow he's done a lot of research, give me information. So based on this information, based on this generator, now this generator does not tell us whether it's a bonded or a floating neutral generator. It does not tell us on the generator, so we wouldn't know it. So what do you do? Continuity tester, go over to the neutral. Crap. Brian, you see the problem?
Yeah, I think we got an issue. It's a tamper-resistant receptacle.
It's a tamper-resistant
So you got to put it in the leads on both.
So how am I going to check the neutral to the
You
ground?
have to put the leads in on both sides first, then you got to pull the one out of the hot and stick it into the ground. Not that I would know that, but I'm just
Don't
saying.
say ground.
Equipment grounding conductor.
Don't say the,
yes, grounding terminal.
The terminal,
yeah.
the grounding terminal. So somehow I got to put two things at the same time to open it up, right? Then get the neutral one. Oh, I need three. What? Anyways, you're an electrician. You know what he's saying, okay? Anyways, go from the neutral to the grounding terminal. If this thing beeps, that means that this is not a floating neutral. This is a bonded neutral system. There's nothing here. Now, you can actually look at the instructions. If you look at the you look at the diagram, the manual right there, open it up, look at the manual, you'll see that that neutral is actually bonded. Right there. Now, if you go to the website to try to find out, I wonder if this thing is bonded or not bonded. Does the generator have a floating ground or a bonded ground? Of course, the word bonded, ground. The neutral is floating. Hold on. That neutral is not floating. That neutral is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor. The neutral is floating. The ground is bonded to the frame, and the earth ground if the generator has been properly grounded properly. I have no clue what that was said. No clue what it says. Makes no sense at all. Plus, this generator the neutral is not floating at all because that neutral is actually bonded to the equipment grounding conductor. Here's another question. So here we go. So now I got some emails that happened today about this generator. He says, customer service says this: we apologize for the confusion. Whatever the dialogue, they've been going back and forth, back and forth. Now, this is really important. Pay attention to this. This is a matter of us having a different language in the electrical industry and in the generator industry. Watch what happens. And when you watch this video again, you're going to see why I said pay attention to this, and you can see how it leads up to this. The jumper of the generator head is bonded to the stator housing. Okay, so the generator is bonded to stator housing. But the stator housing is set up on rubber motor mounts, causing the stator system to be isolated from the generator frame. Hold on. I got a generator that's being held with rubber fittings so that the generator frame, the metal part, is isolated. The stator housing is on rubber motor mounts, and it's not connected to the generator frame. Can you guys visualize that? We have a metal stator housing. You have a metal generator frame, but the stator housing is on rubber mounts, so therefore the generator frame is actually not conductive. The stator is not conductive to the generator frame. Do you guys follow that? But internal, is that neutral bonded to the equipment grounding conductor? Yes. So the neutral is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor, but the stator frame is not bonded. The stator mount, what do you call it? He called that the stator housing is not bonded to the frame of the generator. Let me read it all over again. Ready for this? The jumper of the generator head is bonded to the stator housing, but the stator housing is set up on rubber motor mounts, causing the stator system to be isolated from the generator frame. And because there is no path to ground, not that I understand what that means, maybe that means between the two, until the generator is grounded, and the generator will still be considered a floating neutral. Here's what the industry is saying. They're saying because our stator housing has no electrical connection to the frame of the generator, you want ready for this? This is a floating neutral. And I'm like, oh my gosh. That's not what we do in the National Code. We don't care about the frame of the generator. We care about, is the neutral of the generator bonded with the equipment grounding conductor? Because if it is, then we're going to have to switch the neutral on the transfer switch, or we're going to have to unbond the neutral to the equipment grounding conductor. But at least in this manufacturer, they're saying, even though the neutral is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor, look up here. Even though that neutral is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor going to the grounding terminals of the receptacle, which means the neutrals and the ground of the receptacle are going to be, that's why continuity is going to be there. Even though that is, but because this stator housing is isolated from the frame of the generator, it's going to be marked probably as an unbonded generator. So the markings are going to be a problem. So what happens if you get a generator where the stator housing is not connected to the frame, but the neutral is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor, and you thought that it was an unbonded system because of the instructions that it said, well, then you'd put that manual interlock in there. Well, what would happen? Well, then now you're going to have the neutral conductor in parallel with the equipment grounding conductor. You're going to violate 250.6 objectionable current, whatever. All right, there's another one. Question out here. I'll be using this when needed with a 50 amp manual transfer switch via a plug. Do I need to run a ground wire to a ground rod? Unit will not be stored where it will be sitting when in use. Okay, so the question, hey, do I have to put a ground rod to this generator? Okay, here's the response from the manufacturer that really, okay. Grounding a generator is required for your safety. Hold on one second. Driving a ground rod, setting it next to a generator does nothing for safety. Nada, ever, nothing. So let's establish that. Because the electrons, you drive that ground rod to the earth, think about this. Is the frame of the generator connected to the neutral and the equipment grounding conductor in the generator? No, because it's a floating, what do they call it here? No, because it's a floating. Okay. If you drive a ground rod, you connect it to the frame of the generator, and the frame of the generator is not bonded to the generator system. If there was a fault to the generator frame that's not bonded to the generator, you drive a ground rod, where the electrons going to go? See, they're coming out of the generator. Where they want to go back to? To the generator. They're not trying to go to the earth. They're not just getting sucked into the earth. So of course you don't drive a ground rod at a portable generator, whether it's bonded neutral to equipment grounding conductor, and whether the frame is bonded to that combination neutral bonded conductor or the neutral conductor, doesn't really matter. Now here's the instructions. Attach the ground wire. See this little symbol over here? Ground the generator by tightening the grounding nut against a ground wire. Connect the other end to a copper or brass ground rod. Brian, do they even make brass ground rods? I've never seen a brass.
They do
ground
make
rod.
them.
That's,
Yep.
they do? Okay, I've never seen one. Copper or brass ground rod that's driven into the earth. Are you kidding me? You're going to take a ground rod, you can connect it to the frame of a generator. Whether the frame of the generator was connected to anything or not, it doesn't really matter at all. Okay? For an unbonded system. A generally accepted practice use 12 gauge wire. Okay. Grounding codes can vary by location. Please contact a local electrician. The electricians have no clue either on this, because I didn't know either. So, no, you don't drive ground rods at portable generators where the neutral is bonded, because this is not a floating system. Let's talk about the code. 702.11 says this: separately drive systems. And if you want to make a note in your code book on a separately drive system, that's where the neutral is bonded to the equipment grounding conductor. So if you put neutral bond, so if the neutral is bonded to equipment grounding conductor, is this generator have the neutral bonded to the equipment grounding conductor? Yeah. The fact that the manufacturer thinks it's floating because the frame is not connected to the neutral doesn't take away from the fact that this is only used as a separate drive system unless you remove that bonding connection. Okay. So where a portable standby source is used as a separate drive system, the neutral is bonded, what we've seen, it shall be grounded to a grounding electrode in accordance with 250.30. Guess what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to drive a ground rod. Not to the frame, because the frame is not connected to anything. This is saying that if you have the neutral bonded to the equipment grounding conductor within the generator, then you need to run a grounding electroconductor to a ground rod, and you'll see that, over to the inside of that housing and connect it to where that neutral and ground connection is made. But this manufacturer, and probably others are very similar, they have the frame not connected at all to that neutral bond connection within the generator, and they say connect the ground rod to the frame. Well, that's like a total waste of time. Not that this really matters, guys. Mike, what happens if I didn't drive a ground rod and the neutral was bonded inside the generator and I got all confused and the whole thing like that? It doesn't really matter because the ground rod is not going to serve a purpose because, see, that ground rod has an equipment grounding conductor that's going to the power inlet. From the power inlet, it's going to have an equipment grounding conductor. It's going to get over to the panel board. The panel board has an equipment grounding conductor getting back over to the service, which is already grounded. So it serves no value at all to be driving, complying with 702.11a. So if you didn't, for some crazy reason, because you went to the lug on the generator that's not connected to anything, it doesn't really matter anyhow. Because if you're connected to something, it isn't going to change anything anyhow. But what about if you go non-separately drive? Make a note in your code book. Floating neutral or neutral not bonded to the equipment grounding conductor. You see, at least this manufacturer, maybe others have this idea that they're talking about whether or not the neutral is connected to the frame of the generator. That's not what we're talking about. We're worried about electrons, not worried about words inside here. So you make a note here, non-separately drive. That's where you go in there, you take, take it out, pull it out, unbond the generator, so it's a floating neutral, where a portable optional standby source is used as a non-separate drive system. The equipment grounding conductor shall be bonded to the system grounding electrode. Brian, make a note for me to do a public input. I have no clue what that's trying to say, because see, the guys in 702, they're not on code panel 5, they're not article 250, and I think they're just taking some words and trying to use. Here's what happens. You remove that bond connection, you have your manual interlock for a portable generator in there. You don't drive a ground rod because it serves absolutely no purpose at all. And the generator neutral is separated from the generator itself, but the receptacles are connected to the equipment grounding conductor. Okay? And that is automatically going to get back over to the power inlet, to the panel. Panel is going to get back over to the electrical service where the main bonding jumper is installed, where you're grounding electric conductor, and you're done. So there's nothing to do. So, an unbonded generator frame, they don't do anything. It automatically is going to connect what? Ultimately back to the service, connect to the grounding electrode, it will be grounded. And if there was a fault current leaves the source, travels along here, we've seen this before, gets back over to the main bonding jumper, travels along here, you're perfectly fine. Now, portable generators are not required to be grounded. That's if they're not. Actually, in this case here is a bad example. I can't even use this as an example, so I have to change this graphic. Because see, since this generator is actually being used as optional standby power, 250.34a1 does not apply. The rule that would apply here would be 702.11. A would be for separately drive systems, then you're going to have to do what? You're going to drive a ground rod for it. Well, then go to B, non-separately drive system, just take that bonded jumper off of that, not have to put a four-way or a switch neutral transfer switch. So that graphic is wrong. Mike, Brian, you have any questions up to this point?
Yeah, we got quite a few
Let's go.
So a couple of the guys had some really good observations. We were talking about the details of bypassing a tamper-resistant receptacle, and the guys were like, "Hey, what about the 30 amp or the 20 amp twist lock that's right next to it?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea."
You know what? You know why I didn't do that?
No,
you know why I
don't
didn't
tell me.
say that? I'll be honest. Because I looked at that, and it was too fast for me to try to remember.
Which one was a ground prong?
Which one was... No, I know what the ground prong was. Which one was the neutral? So
Okay.
I mean, I'd have... I didn't want to look stupid in front of everybody. So now, help me, since I'm already looking stupid. So, which one's the ground? Is it the slotted the ground?
I am not even going to look stupid in front of everybody either, but I believe it's the big one is the neutral, and the one with the angle is the ground.
We're not going to do that unless you know
I'm
for a fact.
I'm
Don't
looking
say
right
something
now,
you know.
actually.
Oh, you're looking up something.
Yeah, I'm looking it up for you.
So is this is my, obviously the equipment grounding conductor. This is a bigger one, so that must be the neutral. So go between those 2 points, beep. Okay. You got a bonded system. Got it. Take that little screw off, and then we're done. Get back here, I guess, on this cover here. This right here, I don't know which of these. Anyways, yes, you could do that, but I couldn't remember because I never checked the neutral to ground on those configurations. I'd have to look at, let's see, the range receptacle, whatever. Not that, drive receptacle. All right, what else next?
Had one of the guys was like, hey, did anybody notice the ground wire was inserted on the bolt side of the acorn clamp? Kind of funny. And actually, I didn't notice it till he pointed it out. So that generator manufacturer has a couple issues.
Oh. All right,
Yeah.
number one. And number two, you're like, did you notice this wire is where the threads are? You don't put the wire where the threads are because you start breaking all the threads. The wire needs to go on the other side.
It's a safe zone, right?
For free, the safe zone. So for free advice to Dura Power equipment, might want to make some changes to your information. Call me, and I'll give you some insight. All right, what else, Brian? That's it? All right. Mike, this is really cool. I've had this question forever. Mike, I have 3-conductor SC cable. Usually the Northeast has a lot of this, and actually in Miami and Florida, older homes had this. I have 3-conductor SC cable. That's where you have 2 insulated conductors, and you have a bare, uninsulated neutral, if you know what I'm talking about. I have 3-conductor SC cable from the meter enclosure, which is going to be outside, to the basement service equipment. That's up. It could have been in a house without a basement, but that's common north. You have a meter outside, SC cable comes down, drops in, goes into the basement, it goes to the service equipment panel, and the neutrals and grounds are tied together, and everything is fine. And there's probably a water pipe in there because it's an old electrical system bonded to the water pipe. Okay, it's fine. Then somebody says, you know what, I'd like to get a generator in my house. I want to have let's say a portable generator, but let's just go with a whole house generator. I'm going to go with an automatic transfer switch. Okay. I installed a service-rated transfer switch outside after the meter enclosure. So you had a meter, cable going down, then you have a panel, and they went ahead and put the transfer switch between the meter and the existing service. Am I required to move the grounding and bonding from the existing service equipment, which is in the basement? Do I have to move that grounding and bonding, which is 250/24, from the basement to the service-rated transfer switch outside? Because now here's a problem. That requires me to replace the 3-conductor SC cable, because if you put the service equipment from the basement being supplied by service conductors, and then you put a transfer switch outside service-rated, and you make that your service, that means that you're now running feeder conductors, and you're not permitted to tie the neutrals and grounds together on feeder conductors, violation of 250.142. So now here you got something. You got a house that has a, 100 amp service, 150 amp service. You decide to put a portable generator in. You put an automatic transfer switch. You now provide overcurrent protection for those conductors that before we had no overcurrent protection. But because you provide overcurrent protection, they get reclassified from service conductors to feeder conductors. Now you're going to get screwed because you provided overcurrent protection. Now you have to change that wiring in an existing building and just damage everything. Does that make sense? I'm going to say, no overcurrent protection, I'm okay. But if I provide overcurrent protection, Now it's a problem? Okay, I always had that same issue. I just said if I was an inspector, you're changing a transfer switch. No, I'm not going to make you change everything else. Okay, but watch what happened in the 2020 code. Ready for this? In the 2020 code for 1 and 2 family dwellings, it says that they want to have an emergency switch outside 1 and 2 family dwellings. So the firefighters or responders should be able to go there and know that there is an emergency disconnect, and that term is being used as an emergency disconnect. Now you have a couple ways you could do this. One, you build a brand new house and you automatically put a meter main outside, and then you have some panels inside. Well, if you have a meter main outside, the meter's outside, the main's outside, there's your firefighter emergency switch. If that's the case, well, then you're going to call it an emergency disconnect. It has to be labeled 230.85.1, and it has to be then labeled service equipment or service disconnect. So the emergency disconnect, I don't know if it has to be red or not, so we'll have to double check that. I just make it red. The emergency disconnect has to be identified as an emergency disconnect, and then you can identify it as a service disconnect. Well, Mike, that's great. By the way, just a tip. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not. I don't know if you heard about this, Brian. Ready for this, Brian? Generac is coming out with a meter main service rated transfer switch. Do I need to say that again, Brian, for you to understand that?
That is cool. That is cool.
A meter main service rated transfer switch with, I think, 16 poles.
Oh, wow. I'll be putting one of those on my house. That's awesome.
Is that the coolest thing? So you go and you take the existing, whatever is there, meter main out of there. You put a new meter main in there, and it's a service rated transfer switch. And it also has main breaker, and feed through, I'm sure, to pick up the existing, as well as you can put breakers for the air conditioner, pool pump, a well or irrigation, whatever the case may be. They don't make it yet, guys. That's not available. So the Generac is coming out with a meter main transfer switch panel board. So cool. All right. I was too excited about that. All right. Now, here's an example. 230.85 said you have to have what? An emergency disconnect outside of 1 or 2 family dwellings. But the code is not retroactive. So it's only whenever you're going to do something. So guess what? If you put a transfer switch outside, okay, and your service conductors came inside to the existing service conductors, this is not a service disconnect. This is an emergency disconnect. You with me? So your transfer switch is on the right after the meter. It's an emergency disconnect, and it has to be labeled such. What? Emergency disconnect, not service equipment. Because where's the service equipment? Well, it hasn't changed. It's still inside. So now, in the 2020 code, it's very clear in 1 or 2 family dwellings, you can put the transfer switch after the meter before the service equipment downstairs. This is not service equipment. This is an emergency disconnect, and it would be marked emergency disconnect, not service disconnect. Okay? Another change that was made. They added a rule on 230.82.10. See, 230.82 tells you what's permitted on the supply side of service equipment. Well, if I'm putting a transfer switch and I have, this was the original service equipment in the basement, well, the emergency switch, which is not service equipment, there needs to be a rule that allows you to do that. So since they added 230.85 rules about requiring an emergency switch, 230.82(10), which is new, let me make sure we underline all this, which is new, permits you to have that transfer switch marked. We have to make sure that marking, I'm not sure that marking is correct on here. That marking doesn't look like it's correct. It should say emergency disconnect, not service disconnect on that label right there. Okay, that's another rule change, 230.82.10 to accommodate 230.85. Then we have the question. Well, Mike, wait a minute now. If you put that disconnect ahead of the service disconnect and the service disconnect has the neutrals and grounds bonded together and grounded, what do you do about the bonding and grounding of this emergency disconnect that's not, you have to make sure labels on there, that's not service equipment? Well, 250.25 tells us to go to 250.24. And 250.24 tells us to do what? Bond the neutral to the enclosure. So when you get a transfer switch that's service rated, that neutral is bonded to the enclosure at this location here. But this is not a service disconnect. This is an emergency disconnect, and marked emergency disconnect, not service disconnect. This existing service remains the same, and that existing cable is permitted to continue to stay there because these are service conductors. Now, is that cool or what? Another one. Mike, inspectors in Boston have told me that even in emergency situations, I am required to maintain the AFCI and GFCI protection as required by the NEC. Is the home link capable of working with dual function AFCI, GFCI breakers? In other words, if I put this in, instead of me doing the whole house, but I'm going to take selective circuits, and that way I can use a bonded neutral generator. But what happens if you use the home link? You have to use a generator that has a bonded neutral. It can't be a floated neutral. So if you put your continuity tester, it's like, it doesn't beep. I don't know what the heck you do. I guess you could take the shroud out, take a look at that, and see if there's a permission to bond something that's not even already bonded. So not only that, but if you do that and you get the right generator, you make a bonded generator and you put that in there, and because this is going to be this neutral is being switched here, the inspector says, hey, what are you supplying with that? I need GFCIs or AFCIs or dual function AFCIs, GFCIs. Now, my understanding is that this home link and other manufacturers have similar products, I'm sure, are designed to accommodate like a Cutler hammer. And Brian, what other breakers are common with Cutler hammer? You know, that kind of
BR series is the more common. That's that you find in homes. The tan handle is a CH, and then the BR is more like
no. I didn't answer that question.
Sorry.
What other breaker manufacturers are common?
Okay, you got
with
Square D,
Cutler
Homeline. You got your Siemens. You got your Murray.
Okay,
quite a few.
In other words, so what they've done, what Generac has done, other manufacturer, they've actually partnered with these other manufacturers, and they tested their equipment with the different manufacturer breakers. So then you pop these breakers out and you put all those expensive breakers in, or you install a manual interlock. You check the continuity between the neutral and the grounded contacts and receptacles. No beep, you're good to go. You put an inlock, you put a power inlet, and you mark on there, unbonded neutral system. If you get a beep, you take the cover off, you remove that bond connection. But you could only do that, those manufacturers that give you instructions, tell you how to do it. My understanding is that Generac does not have any instructions that will permit you to do this. If that's the case, and Generac doesn't provide that information, I would make sure I go with, what was that, Champion generators, Brian? Is that what it was? Or I would go with any other generator that helps me solve my problem. So that's what I would do. So this home link doesn't seem to be the best value for me, because especially replacing it with GFCIs, AFCIs, dual function breakers. And then, of course, when you put your manual interlock, you put your receptacle and you put on there floating neutral system only. And then you'd make sure your generator, and then you mark on the generator, right? Unbonded or floating neutral or unbonded generator. I'm done. I did it. Actually, I was not happy before I started this program tonight. I told Brian, I know I'm going to screw it up.
Yep.
I'm not going to be happy, but I'm happy. I'm happy with how it went. So, okay, Brian, let's see if you can bust my bubble.
No, I'm not going to bust your bubble, but do have a couple comments. Now, you keep saying about how easy it is, zip, to unbond and rebond these portable generators.
Just watch the video.
Okay, all right. So I've done this for a number of years. As you know, I've worked on a lot of generators. And that, I will honestly tell you, that is the only generator I've ever seen that's that easy. But that said, some generators, quite frankly, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but just the way they're built is going to be very difficult to do that. So, like you said, you want to see if the manufacturers have instructions. One other comment is
hold on
Okay.
a second. I put a manual interlock, let's say a portable generator.
Sure.
I put a receptacle on there, and I mark it as what's required in 702.7c, floating neutral system only. I've done my job.
Right.
I can't control what generator who brings to it. And if somebody brought a generator there and it was a bonded system, the worst case scenario is going to be some objectionable current,
Right.
a tiny bit. I don't see any safety hazard
Right,
at all.
right.
And maybe because you should have switched to neutral, you should have drove a ground rod there, but you didn't drive a ground rod, you didn't switch to neutral, whatever. So if it's possible and you're the electrician and you're there, well then I would check the continuity. Now what would I do if you can't get in within that? I would just tell the customer, well, watch this video and then you make your decision what you want to do, customer.
Well, and I think it's really more applicable to the guys that are selling portable generators. We sold quite a few of them, so you just want to make sure you know what you're selling your customers.
If I'm selling portable generators, I'm selling the one champion unless
Bingo.
anybody else gives me instructions
Bingo.
to give me the option, because sometimes I have to have it bonded, as we discussed earlier, and sometimes it needs to be unbonded. And I want to be able to have a manufacturer to give me the tools, the information, so if I have a question with the inspector, I can show him or her, and we're good to go. We don't need conflict.
We
else?
had one other comment, and one of the guys says, hey, do you have any information about a utility transfer switch that's an integral part of the utility meter? I don't know if you wanted to make a comment on that, for the portable generators.
Electric utilities have a portable generator transfer switch. This is the coolest thing in the world. It plugs into the meter socket. And then on the side of this round meter socket is going to be a twist lock entry. And so you take the portable generator. You don't have to deal with the electrician. You don't have to deal with anything, anybody at all. You just simply call your utility and say, hey, can you give me a meter socket for a transfer switch for a portable generator? I don't know how many amps they make them, 30 amps or 50 amps. Then the customer tells the electrician, go take a hike. I'm getting my portable generator. I don't know if it's bonded or not bonded. I don't really care about that. All I know is I got a portable generator, get a cord, plug it in a generator, go into my meter, and there's a little base, maybe it's about 5-6 inches thick. Then the meter plugs into this base, and that base is a meter transfer switch. But guess what? My experience is that utilities don't like stuff put on the meter. So if you're an electrical contractor, you go online and you find one of these little puppies, you're like, hey, or you're a consumer, you find one of these puppies, or what it is, you probably get a hold of the utility, they're going to be like, no, we're not plugging our meter into some foreign product, and some foreign product is plugged into our meter socket enclosure. That's a maintenance issue we don't deal with. But then you get those utilities that are kind of like pretty smart business people, and they're like, no, you can't use yours. But we have them that we will supply you, and we'll just charge you $10 a month for the next 50 years.
Well, and so I pulled one up on the screen. I know you couldn't see it while you were talking there, just so everybody could see what you were talking about.
Yeah.
$650. So maybe not what you want to spend your money on, because I'm pretty sure you could probably get a little transfer panel for less money than that.
No, you don't need a
or the
transfer panel.
interlock,
Put the mechanical.
or any number of other solutions.
Put an interlock.
Yeah.
Put an interlock and a receptacle mark on their unbonded generator. And if the generator's there, just remove that bond connection. Bada bing, bada
Exactly.
boom. It's a lot cheaper
And no monthly
But
no
the
monthly
utility,
bill
maybe
from the
six-
utility.
for the rest of your life. And when you move, all right, guys, I'm actually pretty impressed with that one. I wasn't happy with some of my do, but I'm happy with that one. God bless. I'm done with generators. So if you send me more emails, I'm not doing another video on that. We got a lot of more stuff. Let me show you some stuff we're going to do. I want to talk about splicing a conductor. I got just a lot of fun stuff that's going to go on. All right. Oh, by the way, next Tuesday, I don't think I'm going to be here. I'm going to Angel Fire to ride my downhill bike. Then I'm going to Durango to ride my downhill bike. then I'm going to probably Telluride. I don't know if they have a bike park there to probably ride my downhill bike.
Just rub it in.
So I'm going to be gone for, I'm going to be gone for 10 days. By the way, guys, only 2 weeks ago that I started doing downhill, aggressive downhill. I'm almost 70 years old. I'm 69. Man, do I love downhill biking. Oh my gosh, I'm going crazy. I'll get a video for you guys to watch, Brian. I got to go to Durango with my buddy there. I'm going to get the video and I'll get it back to you, and then we can put it up and you guys can see what the heck
Definitely,
I do.
we need to see that.
All right, guys. Next Tuesday. Hey, Brian, what are you covering next Tuesday?
We're going to have a good time. I'm not actually sure if I'm going to tell you, but we're going to cover some really cool technology stuff, some of the fun new features that we've added to the website, some of the new software we've been building. We're going to cover some really cool stuff. Have a good time.
All right. All right, guys. I will see you not this Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, unless I'm still riding my downhill bike somewhere, then Brian will pick it up. But you know what, Brian? Maybe I can call in and I can do something, just say hi to you guys.
100%. We will definitely get you to call in. And with the time zone difference, I'm going to have you do a video call, so you make sure you're in a good spot when you call in so we can get a good picture.
Okay. All right, okay. We'll do that. All right, we'll do it. I'll make sure, like, next Tuesday. Okay, I'll make it a point to be somewhere on Tuesday.
Someplace cool.
I'll just say hi for, like, I'll just say hi for 45 seconds, something like that, and you guys can
Sounds
go back
great.
to work. All right, guys. Hey, guys, I love you guys, and thanks for putting up with me. Hey, pray for my wife, please. She lives with me 24/7. Okay, God bless.